All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this session. We are super, super excited today. We're going to be talking about how to level up your ABM strategy. And I've got two fantastic guests with us, both from a fantastic company out of Atlanta called Terminus. If you don't know about Terminus yet, I would encourage you all to pay attention to what they're doing. They are the owners, creators of Flip My Funnel, who is pretty much taking the industry by storm, whether it's inside sales or marketing or the combination of both. So I want to introduce both of them. One of them is newly appointed VP of Sales, Tonni Bennett. I've known Tonni for the last year or so and have watched what she's done in building a sales team and just really making a great name for Terminus as well for herself. So congratulations on the promotion, Tonni, and good to have you.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Our other guest is Sydney Smith, who is the Director of Customer Success, also at Terminus. I met Sydney while I was doing some training out there about a month or so ago, and she really does understand not just the value of customer success, but what it also means to sales and to marketing and to engineering, and really being that center cog in the wheel. So, Sydney, very glad to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me.
Sure. So, as we talk about, account-based marketing and account-based sales, it is the soup du jour of 2017. It is what everybody's been talking about. Of course, y'all have been talking about it for a little bit longer than the rest of us. And I think that people are really passionate about it. They really get the concept of it. People who've been in sales or marketing a long time have probably thought of it as more like, well, haven't we always been doing this as a whole? But it's gotten way more strategic and way more tactical and, frankly, a lot easier to do in some ways. So with everybody sort of moving in this direction, lots of people moving in this direction, where do you begin? How do you define what the beginning of ABM looks like or account-based sales looks like? And then how do you know you've actually accomplished it? When do you know you're the actual expert at it and that your team or system is hitting on all cylinders?
Yeah, well, that's a loaded question. I want Sydney to mostly talk about this one, but I wanted to preface by saying, so at our company, Terminus, we are an account-based marketing company, and so we tried to do ABM internally and join our marketing, sales, and customer success teams across the organization, and we've made a lot of mistakes ourselves, but have also learned a lot. And so really excited to have the person who's grown our customer success team, because Sydney's worked with over 300 companies that are doing account-based marketing in their organizations and has seen a lot of companies start from scratch. And so there really is no exact way to define what a beginner, especially what a pro looks like, because it's so different for every business. This is a strategy. There's not one size fits all, so it's a little gray. But with that in mind, we want to start by defining, what does a beginner look like versus what does a pro look like?
Okay.
Sydney, I'll let you start with that.
Sure. So ABM can be really daunting when you look at it holistically, right? But I think, and the majority of our customers come to us and they're beginners or label themselves as beginners, and that they're dipping their toes in ABM to kind of see what it feels like and if they can get results. And so what I tell my customers, and really what the best approach is first, let's figure out where there's the biggest need. So let's take that and put our focus there. Let's focus on also, because typically they have a small amount of budget allocated because they're just getting started. Let's figure out ways to be scrappy and resourceful. So especially when it comes to Terminus and you're collecting your creative and you're getting your messaging all set and you're getting your content organized to lead your audience to, what do you have in place today that could lend itself to an ABM strategy? What do you have that's very tailored and targeted towards the audience that you are trying to put this message in front of? And how can we use what's worked in the past coupled with kind of looking at your content in a new creative way to set up your first campaign? So I think, just starting out with, a list of target accounts, again, focusing on that part of the sales process or prior to the sales process where you have the biggest need, and getting, thinking very creatively and being scrappy, to be completely honest, with messaging and content that you have today.
When you say biggest need, like what are some of the examples your clients have when you're you're right. It's very daunting. It's like, well, I need it all, right? Like I want all of it. And you got to sort of take it from what I'm hearing from both of you is you got to sort of bite off a small bite. So how do you help them prioritize that? Or what are some examples of their biggest needs that people would be like, oh, I feel like I'm like those people?
Yeah, so there's a couple things, and it's going to differ by company, right? So some companies come to us and they're like, okay, it's more top of the funnel, really, accelerating, the creation of opportunities. So getting it to the point where it's qualified, getting it to the point where we can actually hand this over to sales, and they're going to be like, sweet, this is a good fit potential customer. I'm excited to work this deal. So I think, in that case, we're looking at helping, sales development, providing air cover, and focusing on that portion of the pie. Whereas some companies, I was talking to one customer today, and they have no issue with that. They have a demand gen engine that is fully ramped up. They have no problem on that side of the house, but it's actually within the sales process. They have a super long sales cycle, so it's around 18 months, right? And they're selling into big enterprise accounts. They really need help in expediting that process. So we're going to focus in on stage-based campaigns. And again, with stage-based campaigns, once you get into sales pipeline, you don't have to create a campaign for each stage of the sales pipeline at first, but just knowing that that's the need, you can start focusing on those accounts in meaningful ways, and surely, split it up by 2 if you have to start out that way, and then eventually, as Tonni mentioned, layer on new campaigns to get more segmented and targeted.
And I'm gonna drill down a little bit on stage-based campaigns. So, are you saying there that okay, so if we have people in our lead stage, we want to focus there with this kind of messaging. If they're we've had a conversation, so we're still qualifying them. You're talking about that. If you're like, what is stage-based? Oh, here we go. All right, what do you got?
This visual will help. I think sometimes as we work in the space, we get a little bit in the weeds. I don't want anyone to be confused.
Right.
So I think it's important when someone's moving to an ABM strategy to remember this is almost like the opposite of a lead-based strategy. And I know that sounds obvious, but a lot of our customers, I know Sydney can testify to this, come to us and still expect to measure things the same way and to have the same tactics. And that is just not the case. So this visual, I think, provides a really good picture of how to think about account-based marketing. So with lead-based marketing, it's very top of funnel. It's all about filling the top, and that's kind of it. Account-based marketing is once you have a lead, or more importantly, really once you have an account that you believe to be best fit, what do you do from there to turn that account into revenue or to continue to get revenue from that account? And so it's a totally different way of thinking about marketing. So as we have here, you can see there's 3 different segments of account-based marketing campaigns. Some companies use account-based marketing to drive demand gen, as Sydney was alluding to. Some companies use it to help accelerate pipeline velocity. This is a really underutilized way to use account-based strategy. Sales often, I can tell, my team does this a lot, gets stuck with their 1 or 2 contacts, and so allowing marketing to help expand their reach within the account, as it takes 5 to 10 decision makers typically to close a deal according to Gartner. And then customer marketing. This is more relevant to some companies than others. We have some customers that do almost exclusively land and expand deals, and they need to get deeper in the account. All that to say, not to get too into the weeds, depending on how your business works, you pick a strategy that works and you start there. So for instance, we have a number of customers who have an exact target list of accounts, 500, 1,000 accounts they want to break into that are totally net new. They would do what we call pre-targeting, which means take a list of accounts that's completely cold, and as the sales team is calling into them, marketing would support them with account-based campaigns. So that could be display ads, which is what our product does. It could be direct mail campaigns. It could even be marketing email campaigns. There's a number of ways that marketing can support sales to help them make more of an impact in that account and reach more decision makers. As it progresses, continuing to help sales take that over the line to schedule an appointment and so forth. So again, not to go into every single strategy, but depending on the customer's need, we determine where do they need to start. So if a customer does not have a target account list, we would encourage them to move that direction. But we did talk to one customer, they generate 6,000 leads a month. And so we asked them, well, how many of those leads are actually qualified? and they said around 15% are decent. So essentially, account-based marketing is not about generating net new leads, but once they have a lead generated that they've deemed to be decently qualified, an account-based approach would then find other people in that account and, again, use marketing tactics along with sales tactics to try to break into that account, set an appointment. So all that to say that just kind of progresses.
Yeah. So I have a question, right? So as I listen to the two of you and you talk about the customers you've had, and I look at this this great diagram and I hear all these different ideas, in some ways it feels like, to really do ABM, you've got to have like a full-on marketing team, you've got to be fully ramped. Like, do you have small customers who are focusing in on this? Like, do you have small companies with 10 or 15 employees who can approach an ABM strategy? Where do you guys see that? Or is everybody at least 500 customers? Like, what do you think?
Definitely not.
Yeah, so we definitely have smaller companies. It's just, again, going back to what I said previously, it's about being resourceful and starting out small and not, becoming too overwhelmed with this. That said, the expectations do need to be set, but it does require time and effort. And some of the smaller companies, want that instant gratification. So it requires a little bit of coaching and making sure that everything is set up, for success, because ultimately it requires effort on multiple channels to really effectively run an ABM strategy, right? So messaging across, display ads, direct mail, your email marketing campaigns, the conversations your SDRs are having on the phone, and that your sales reps are having over the phone. So it's definitely doable. It's just about let's, sit down, put the time and effort really in on the front end and make sure we have a very clear plan on how we're executing to ensure that all of those efforts are in line. And especially, one thing marketers come to us and say, especially from the smaller companies, are like, we don't really have like a full-on ABM stack. This is the only, Terminus is the only ABM tool we're using right now. Like, is that in any way going to be a detriment to us? And we say, no, it's just about taking the efforts that you're currently using and reframing them to really, fit in to, or really take on an ABM approach.
Right. So
less about the size of the company and more about what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. And I think that the piece I want to just make sure where we don't overwhelm the audience too is that it's like, okay, if you're going to take this approach, with the thought of looking at Terminus, it's like, okay, well, maybe this month we're going to work on our Google ad campaigns, and next month we're going to do something else, right? It's taking those smaller bite-sized pieces, and I think, as you've alluded to earlier, I think you called it layering up and layering on as time goes by. Is that also what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. I think to your point about not being confused, someone doesn't need to have 15 marketers to do this well. To Cindy's point at the beginning about being scrappy, we have companies, we typically don't sell to really tiny companies, but we have a couple of companies less than 50 employees that are very successful because they sell to larger accounts. They know what companies they want to reach. And actually, sometimes if a business is smaller, it's easy for them to rally around this approach because it takes a lot of effort. You have to do extra planning about when does the direct mail go out? When's the right time for the call to happen? If we're going to put out ads 3 weeks before the SDR's call, who's going to help with that timing? So it actually takes a lot of coordination, but it's so worth it. What we have up on the screen here is a great example of what you were just talking about with layering on. We ourselves, when we were a small company, struggled to at first do ABM because we were small, we were all running around like crazy. And so how we dipped our toe in was instead of focusing on demand generation, we said we really want to focus on pipeline velocity. ABM's a growing space, a number of people are interested, but after they become interested, we want to hold their interest after the first demo. So we put out a very basic ABM program for pipeline velocity. And so instead of trying to make a different message and creative and content for every single stage of the buying process, we simplified it. Once a demo is scheduled in our system, an opportunity is created under 0.5 demo scheduled. They would receive a particular type of branding via display. And then as that deal progressed, the first demo was completed and the second demo was completed. The next two stages received a particular type of creative and received a direct mail campaign after the second demo, which has our book, Account-Based Marketing for Dummies. We send that to a couple people in the organization. From there, we progressed to late stage ops for some different messaging. So this is really basic. There's nothing that fancy about it. This was us dipping our toe in. And after we learned a lot from the campaign, now we have different messaging and additional direct mail steps at each stage of the buyer journey. So all that to say, you could start here. Once someone masters this, they say, okay, now I want to focus on demand gen. Okay, now that I've done well with demand gen, I want to do more persona level targeting. We want to reach out to VP levels with different content and messaging than day-to-day users. Maybe put in some more industry specific stuff. Instead of a generic case study ad, a tech company would see a case study ad from a tech company, and a manufacturing company would see a case study ad from a manufacturing company. What would you guys about?
Yeah. So I think, what you're getting at is just you continue as you get more, sophisticated and get more, accustomed to how account-based marketing is working at your company. So starting with the stage-based approach, and then like Tonni said, layering on, persona-based messaging, industry-based messaging. Our most advanced customers are doing, they're creating messaging for every stage of the buying process, as well as targeting existing customers for upsell, cross-sell, expansion purposes. And they're also segmenting by industry, if it makes sense for them. They're segmenting by persona. They're segmenting by company size. So they realize that, enterprise companies respond very differently than, SMBs to their particular product offering or service offering. There's so many different ways that you can go with it. And so it's just about getting more and more targeted as you just layer on these different approaches. And, above and beyond that, we have some companies that we work with that are doing the very hyper-targeted approach, as we like to call it. So they're just targeting one company and one campaign, if you will, and really customizing the messaging and the content they're leading them to that particular company's pain point and needs, which is like the top, tier approach there.
So you guys, you mentioned something and it, you both, I think, repeated it in a certain order, and I didn't know if that's because that's the best practice or is that just how you guys have seen it work. But you've mentioned, this stage-based approach as well as this persona-based approach. Is there an opinion or a belief in the system, or is it still too early to go, we should always start with stage-based first because we want to generate and capture interest? Or is it more like, no, we know who our personas is. We don't need to focus on stage-based. We could start with persona-based first. Does it really matter? Have you seen any experience around that?
Well, frankly, a lot of customers already have persona-based content already, so they just do that right out of the gate.
Okay.
Right? But I think it's really going to depend, though. Like I said, on the company's goals, on what their needs are. I think, where you begin is like where that biggest need is. And if they know persona-based is working and they already have that, let's start there.
Right.
That's like when we already know that messaging is resonating with those guys. And that's a great way to segment your target account list. But we definitely encourage the stage-based approach because we do believe, and we have seen a lot of success with serving up, stage-based messaging and content. It's been really cool to see.
Great.
Yeah, real quick, Richard, one of the reasons why we emphasize it here, I don't think it's always because it has to be the way that someone starts or something. I think one of the big reasons why we emphasize it is a lot of our customers are brand new to ABM, and again, they're struggling to wrap their brain around it, and they say, great, so I want to measure the success of this campaign based on how many leads I generate. And we're just like, no, that's not the way to measure success. Again, ABM is not about generating the net new lead. You already know the account, and you should have already done your homework and research on the key stakeholders in the account. You probably missed one or two, but if you've done your homework, you don't need to generate a net new name. What you need to do instead is engage that audience, especially the ones that don't know who you are, have never been to your website, have never engaged with you before, and you need to put something in front of them that's engaging, that's relevant, in order to drive them to action. So not just our product, but a lot of ABM products are designed to reach that subset of the audience you have not spoken with before. And so again, the idea is, if you're selling to, let's say we sell to marketing, if I'm in touch with the director of marketing and I've never gotten to speak to the CMO or VP, and finance is typically involved, we would put messaging in front of all those other parties, persona-based and stage-based, in order to try to progress them forward in the buying cycle. So we believe that stage-based is often a missed but very powerful part of the equation.
So let's talk about one more thing, metrics, right? So it's not about net new leads, right? What are the types of metrics? And I know that could change whether you're quote unquote starting your ABM strategy or you've already been layering on your ABM strategy. Is it pipeline velocity, days in a sales stage? Like, what are the kind of metrics you're recommending to people to start to track to create a baseline and try and improve, or what are they not even aware of?
Yeah. So I think the common thread here is all metrics, success metrics that we talk about with ABM are focused on creating pipeline, contributing to pipeline, and generating revenue. So that's like at the core of everything. That's what we're trying to do. And so that's really where I start with my customers. But then it's about stepping back and saying, okay, where in this sales process or prior or after, do you want to focus on? And that's going to determine that's going to nail down to our specific success metrics that are going to contribute ultimately to generating that revenue. And so especially at, doing some demand gen type approaches, you can start to get creative in associating some of those engagement metrics with contributing to pipeline and ultimate revenue. And so that's when we can get into, are we, affecting the performance in other channels. So, ABM requires all of these different efforts and channels, and they all work together, right, to influence each other and have positive influences on each other, hopefully. And so we look at the influence on other channels, but also ultimately see how that's connecting to, okay, are we creating opportunities? Are we more likely to create opportunities as we use these channels to target this audience? And then ultimately we're creating these opportunities, which is contributing to pipeline and ultimately driving through, to close that deal. So I think it's really about drilling down into the specific stage that you're focusing on, and figuring out what makes sense, because it may just be as granular as moving from stage 1 discovery to, stage 3 evaluation. Some of our customers want to get very granular and then track that progression. And I think that's totally valid. It's about where they have that need and where they really want to speed things up.
So does some of this also sounds a little bit like, better, faster, cheaper doesn't necessarily mean that faster is timeline. It just means more effective and efficient, right? Like you're getting the right people into the 90-day pipeline or 9-month sales cycle, rather than wasting time with 25% of these other people who are never going to be there. So is that a little bit of what we're hearing, as well as, actually you can increase the velocity through the pipeline too?
Well, all of the above, yeah. So a stat that we give in our sales process a lot is, according to Forrester, less than 1% of all leads turn into revenue. Less than 1%. So the point of ABM is, if we're starting with less, but they're best fit, the conversion rates are going to be so much higher. So initially it feels awkward, like we're not starting with a pool of 1,000 leads. Like, what's going to happen to the sales team? We don't have enough leads. But actually, if we have 100 best fit accounts and we can convert those at a 40% rate to meeting and increase that throughout the funnel, we're still generating more revenue. And that revenue is going to be more valuable to the business. They're going to stay with the business longer, reduce churn risk. So to Sydney's point, the metrics that we look at with customers are not, again, how many leads are generated or conversions, but it's about, what did those progression metrics look like through the funnel? For example, one of our customers ran a demand gen campaign. They did an A/B test. They had a really strong SDR team. Half of the SDR accounts, they used Terminus to provide air cover. And this is just with our product, but you would have similar effects with any ABM product. Half of their accounts, they used Terminus to provide some air cover. Half they didn't. They set 28% more meetings in the group where they ran Terminus ads because it helped to increase awareness amongst that account. Then another customer did a pipeline velocity campaign and shortened their sales cycle by 10 days. So to Sydney's point, depending on what we're trying to impact, we're looking at the conversion rate. Are we setting more meetings? Are we turning more meetings into customers? Are we improving from interest stage to evaluation stage, as granular or big pictures they want to go? We're looking at, are the efforts that we're putting forth actually moving customers across the line? Because who cares if you generate a lead if it doesn't turn into revenue? But if you have a great account, you're doing the right tactics to it, you're much more likely to convert that into a customer.
Yeah, and to illustrate that point of quality over quantity, we had one customer recently who, we were able to help, Terminus, along with the other ABM tools and channels they were working off of, were able to help move this account and ultimately close this deal that was 10%, this one deal that was 10% of their annual recurring revenue, which was pretty powerful. And that's just illustrating the point. Like, it's not about leads. It's just about, getting super targeted with your account list and then taking this very strategic approach, omni-channel approach, and just doing all you can to really, personalize the journey for them. And if that's like, your business and you're going after these huge whales, and you can, especially in their case, affect, one deal to close 10% of that revenue, that's pretty amazing.
That's pretty cool. Awesome. Well, what haven't we talked about? We've talked about a lot today. We've got a couple of minutes left. Is there any other sort of, well, Richard, here's one more strategy. Here's one more thing people should think about as they embark on their ABM strategy. Maybe they start to audit what they're currently doing. Like, what else would y'all recommend?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say generally, not to be too high level here, but to think creatively outside of the box, and the graphic we were showing earlier helps to really think through, like, okay, we're starting like where we have the most need and the most pain, but like thinking through after that as you get more advanced or, intermediate, thinking outside the box of like, how can we affect these other areas and what other creative ways can we get at this company? And a lot of it is thinking through, okay, and evaluating, analyzing what you've done so far with ABM, because a lot of what ABM is just, it's gathering data, it's gathering insights to figure out how you should be marketing in the future. Like, a lot of our customers find out a lot about what's actually not working, which is really important. So I think, taking all of that and just continuing to level up your strategy, whatever level you're at, and beginner and advanced might be, beginner for one company might be advanced for another and vice versa. But I think it's just really thinking creatively about marketing and not being afraid to think outside the box.
I agree. And I think we got like really deep in the weeds really fast. So hopefully we didn't confuse anyone with all that. But the idea is, again, figure out what is your biggest need as a business. And then depending on what that is, what do we need to do to generate more revenue? And of course, we focus specifically on marketing. We sell to marketers, but from a marketing perspective, how can we best support sales? Do they need more support in demand gen? Do they need more pipeline air cover support? Do we have a bunch of dead ops we need to try to revive? Whatever you want to impact, then think creatively, okay, do we sell to IT? Great. Do they answer the phone? Maybe not. So what are touch points they'll respond well to? Do we sell to marketing? Do they respond well to email? Yep, maybe, right? So figure out the channels, the touch points that would respond best to them, and the messaging that's going to be relevant. And for some companies, it's industry-based. For some companies, all industries have the same value prop. That doesn't matter, but maybe something else matters. So again, based on how you currently segment the messaging in your business and where you have the greatest needs, start there. Come up with how can we maximize how many channels we reach out to this audience in front of, and maximize how do we speak to as many people in the account as possible, and then just do that. Like, it's really not complicated. Target the right people in the right accounts across as many channels as you can.
And one more thing, it probably goes without saying, but ensuring that whatever strategy that you want to roll out, so coming from a marketer's perspective or one of our customers' perspectives, you have to make sure that sales is in line. I know that's probably, an obvious thing with sales and marketing alignment being so associated with ABM, but that's gotta be, you have to have sales on the same team. It's not going to work. We know from experience, we tried that. And, always making sure that you get input from sales to ensure that they're, really getting buy-in and they feel like they're valued and invested in the process is super important.
I think if salespeople understood not the complexity, but maybe the ability to have this laser focus that ABM really has, it will feel a lot better, right? Like, I think that they'll feel like that air support is legitimate air support. It is the right content that's been created to be getting in front of the right people at the right time. So, it is one of those places where I think that this account-based world is really going to help minimize the friction between sales and marketing in the long run. At least that's the goal. That's what we all hope.
Well, the challenge is you can't really be very effective at the strategy if the two aren't working together, because the whole point is we would have to be working on the same accounts. So if we're not in communication about how we're going to do that, that's not going to work.
Totally agree. All right. Well, ladies, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. We wish you all the best in 2017, and I'm sure we'll see lots of you at, I don't know if it's going to be SaaStr, or obviously we'll see you at Revenue Summit coming up in San Francisco, which you guys are a sponsor with Saleshacker and us on. So we look forward to that, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.